this morning, but hopefully things will go better technology-wise now. This is beginning of HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. Specifically, we're looking at tutorial 1. Now, I'm going to go over to Blackboard later on and talk about what's in there and what do you need to focus on and so forth. You probably don't need to hear me read a bunch of definitions to you. So for the most part in this class, we'll focus on the coding side and then go from there. If there's time, then we'll cover the important parts of the definitions and so forth. How many of you have programmed with an HTML5 or HTML? Is that my phone? Just in case it's the car. It's going. How are you? Don't do that. That's good. Hi. What about you? You did what? Okay. I thought you said you went to the casino. Yeah. That's why. Okay. Good. Just so mad. It's like, well, you mad. Like when the lady's like, excuse me, how can I go bananas? Yeah. He's like, he gives me because I can play on these internally to raging. Just because I'm like, he looks over me though. I'm like, I was at a crack a joke. He's not appreciated. One like $500. Yeah. What is I'm lost. I'm trying to find that. This person no, so it's great. Yeah. I didn't expect to win anything. This is my show. Oh. Stop it. This is my. I'm going to use this quite software. I'm a little it's like on my calendar. Chinese. Oops. Are we supposed to do this? I have no idea. I don't think there's anything we're supposed to do. Okay, what's the last one? I have no idea. The intro. I'm helpful. Yeah, tell me how you found. I know, what am I doing? You just got more told to do something. What? Okay, here's the thing, it's like, someone goes, oh, Peter can do that, like, well, since he volunteered him, you can do it. Okay. You know. We're here, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, I'm here now too. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I thought we were missing you for a second.
No, they called me on my office phone. My office phone is over the other side of the room, so but they were getting everything arranged or figured out there. Okay. Now Mulvane's not attached, but not sure what's going on there. But we'll go ahead and start. Um, Now, what I was indicating is this is HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript portion, and I'll focus on the coding part, not necessarily definitions. Definitions you can go out there and read and say what is what does W3C stand for, things like that. Um, Now, I'm recording this in YouTube video format, and I think we've got all the bugs ironed out. So if you don't have a computer in front of you, you can do this later on. Go ahead and go to your File Explorer. And if you have a flash drive with you, plug in your flash drive, and then we're going to create a folder on it. Do not store it on the local PC. I don't care if you do, but you're probably not going to get the same computer next day here, at least here in Wellington. And that's probably the same once they get that room configured at the main campus. You're probably not going to have the same computer each time. Could be if you arrive there and nobody else is sitting there. But then you're counting that nobody has necessarily destroyed your files. Now, in theory, when you log in as your user ID, you should have access to your portion of the network. If that's looks like it's configured correctly for you, you can save them on the network. I think flash drives are safer. Now, go ahead and go to your flash drive, and we're going to create a folder. To create a folder, you can, I don't know if you can do it up here or not. You just right-click in the white area. I don't know where it's at. If you right-click in the white area, then it'll pop up, and you can do a new and folder. Did you get that?
New folder.
Yeah, choose new and then choose folder. And then you call it whatever you want, just as long as you remember where everything's stored at. I just call mine just generally HTML. Now you can double click the HTML there. Now if you right click in the white area again, there is a way to do new, and then you may or may not have an option here where it's a web page. I have no clue. I have no clue on Linux.
I'm ready to Google this.
Do you need a? If you want to jump over there to that that computer that's plugged in the network.
I think I'll Google on this one so I can switch over.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be any help. I can fumble around Linux, but okay. Now I don't have that there, so that's fine.
Oh, Notepad.
To go into it, if you're not responding, right click on the file folder and choose like pictures. And now you should be able to go to your flash drive. I haven't debugged that problem yet. I fixed most of the issues from last week except for that one. That may take me a year or two to figure that one out. Typically what that means when it goes off to Never Never Land is it's trying to find network drives. But there's no network drives with these laptops, so I'm a little bit confused on why it's kind of hanging up. Now, if you don't got Notepad up and running, click in your search bar here again and type Notepad. Then you can go into it. There's also WordPad, but I like Notepad. Now we're going to type in less than, and then HTML, and then greater than. Press your enter a few times, and then we're going to do a less than, and then your slash HTML, and then a greater than. Now we're also going to do the same with body. So I do a less than, body, greater than, and then do an enter a few times, and then you do a slash body. We're going to talk more about these in the PowerPoint here in a little bit. This is markup language. The HTML represents the beginning of your web page. The body it represents the beginning of your body of the web page. This closing says, okay, hey, we're done with the body of the web page. This is the end of that. And then this closing HTML here represents closing of the entire page. You get it?
Yeah, I have used Notepad plus.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now I'm gonna, in the middle here, I'm gonna say my first web page. Within the bodies, the starting and closing tag, you can put anything. Now we're gonna go ahead and save this. So I'm gonna do a file save. And I'm gonna go to that folder that I created. Yeah, it's weird. In Windows 10, what it should do is a folder you've just been working with is here listed. It's like common folders. I'm curious why it's not here, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so I go to Documents. And here's HTML5, so I'll go to that. Now I want to give it some kind of name. Now I'm going to name this mypage.html. You can end it with HTML, you can end it with HTML. Now you see where this says save as type and it says text documents? Very important on this. You want to do the drop down and you want to choose all files. On some operating systems, if you leave it as if you have the HTML there and you don't change it, it'll put the .txt on the end. Not all operating systems. I couldn't tell you which ones actually don't do that. But if you change it to all files, it'll save it as HTML. Now we'll click Save. Now if you go back to your File Explorer, you should see a file there. Now the file you see should say HTML file. If it says text, that means you left the TXT on there. Now I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to choose Open with Google Chrome, just because I like Google Chrome. And you see it pops up, and it says my first web page. So real exciting. Did we get that work as a computer? Open in Visual Studio. Let me take a look at it. I have HTML file.
All types. There you go.
Where you go? Oh, okay. Yeah, they're not Google Chrome. Not sure why that popped up with that. Okay, now that's the basics of creating a web page. So if you got that down, everything will build upon that throughout the entire semester. Now I'm not going to make this full screen because I screwed up the computer this morning by doing that. So I'll go over here. Objectives: explore the history of the web, create the structure of an HTML document, insert HTML elements and attributes, insert metadata into the document, and then define a page title. Mark page structures with sectioning elements, organize page content with grouping elements, mark content with text level elements, insert inline images, insert symbols based on character codes. Mark content using lists, create a navigation list, link to files within a website with hypertext links, link to email addresses and telephone numbers. Sometimes people don't understand in IT about email addresses. Real popular, people want you to make it such that your email that you put on there, you can click it, and then you can send an email. Well, that's really nice, but when you click that, what does it oftentimes do? There are ways around it on a computer. No, not necessarily that. Just in general, if you click that on a computer, it'll try to bring up your installed Outlook on your computer. Do all of you have Outlook configured on your computer? No. Is it working? The what? Oh, it's different. But yeah, a lot of people don't have a local client installed. They use Google Mail. They use Yahoo. Some old people use AOL. That's still around. So we'll talk about the issues with that. Let me try to make this big and hopefully I don't screw the computer up again. Okay, so the structure of an HTML5 document. Up here, you got a document type declaration. We'll talk more about that. You see there's the HTML tag. That marks the beginning of the HTML document. And down here at the bottom, you have a /HTML. We have some meta tags, and these tell different things here. And then comment. I don't think I've ever used a comment besides in a teaching HTML class. For the most part, nobody goes and reads in a HTML file by hand. You use other utilities for it. So that's what documenting is probably not going to be very meaningful. There are some cases that, though, if you are installing a script that you're going to run, well, maybe you want to put some documentation on what you're doing exactly. So if somebody else reads it, they can understand. There's you see there's a head and /head. That refers to the document head. Contains information about the document. This is also where you'll put your JavaScript code. So that'll become very important in this class. Meta tags, an example of it is in theory, and I mentioned this before, when you put meta tags in there, you should appear high in the search. So if you go to Google search, your web page should appear fairly high. But people can pay now to be high, pay to be high. At least it wasn't too inappropriate. But you can pay to be high in the search listing. So meta tags, important for your own purposes, if you're not going to pay, the name of your web page actually will determine how high you appear on the site too. Now, people used to try to fool these search engines with meta tags. They would try to type spectrum analyzer 1,000 times. By typing it 1,000 times, they figured they'd be number one on the list. Well, these places go out there and they look for you trying to fool them. And some of them do full body, such that they'll look through your entire web page and they'll look for occurrences. But again, what do you think people do? They try to put a bunch of occurrences in their web page. They would try to say spectrum analyzer everywhere. Maybe ever go to one of those pages, you clicked on it and didn't have anything to do with what you're looking for, but maybe a lot of the words. Again, they were trying to fool the search engine. Used to be they would put a lot of extra text in there and change the font to white. So you have white text on a white background. You couldn't actually see it, but that's how they were trying to fool them. Well, Google's pretty smart about all that now. I'd be surprised if you can really pull much over on them. Again, the body header's there, and then the closing body down here. So that's got kind of our structure of it. Did I put a head and slash head in my webpage? No, it's optional. There's not many things that are required. The HTML is required. The body. I'm not even sure if you have to put the closing when you're building one. Just exploring the World Wide Web. A network is a structure in which information services are shared. A host or node can be any device that's capable of sending and receiving data electronically. Server is a host that provides information or service to other devices on the network. Everything's changing. Everything seems like it's being connected to the internet. You've heard the Internet of Things. Pretty soon they'll have your there's this show I watch. There's a lot on Sundays, Bar Rescue. I love that show. And they got this app so that you can point it at the liquor bottles, I guess, and it monitors how much liquor was consumed. And then it compares somehow, and it tells them how much was wasted. Takes an automatic inventory. If you got an app, you can point at bottles and take automatic inventory. Where it's headed is you got a refrigerator, and it automatically monitors how much of each liquid you have in your refrigerator. So you know exactly when you need milk. You can know exactly butter would be a little bit hard, right? Unless it's in a clear container. But that's where everything's headed. It's networked in. A lot of cases you can change your temperature from your cell phone. Or your watch. So everything is going to be connected in at some point. Let's see. Let's see. Computer or other device that receives a service called a client. In a client-server network, clients access information provided by one or more users. A LAN, a network confined to a small geographic area, such as within a building or department. We have a local area network here at Cali. Such we can access it within our department. We have a LAN, another type of LAN, which we'll talk about later on, such that if I sign on my computer in my office, I can access the network of all of Cali. So it's all connected together. That's different than a local. When I say local, you guys should be on local. I don't think these are connected to Cali's network. I don't think you can sign on as your sign on there and see all of your files. Down in Arc City, they'll be able to, but not here. I want this to be a safe environment, such that we wouldn't like throw a Trojan up on the website and take down Cali for 2 or 3 weeks, and David Hayes is looking for a job. Now, network covers a wide area, such as several buildings or cities, is called a wide area network. So we got a variation of that here. That's what allows us to see our file folders and so forth, no matter where you're signed on. Largest wide area network is the internet. And this talks a little bit about the history. Other researchers at CERN, nuclear research facility, laid the foundations for the World Wide Web in 1989. Nuclear research facility. The idea on it, one of the ideas, I'm sure they had other plans. You just don't think just one, but was that if you had all these different sites around and they were connected together, if Russia, for example, bombed Chicago and that wiped out that segment of the network, you still wanted the other portions to be able to talk. So that's the idea. When they got tired of it, they turned it over to education, and education used it. And then people got into it that were in sales and marketing, and they got all excited. They thought, this is a tool we can reach everybody in their household. So we don't have to send them newspapers or magazines, and that's kind of the birth of the World Wide Web. Now, this is a system of interconnected hypertext documents allowed users to easily navigate from one topic to another. Now, is that the internet? Internet is the actual infrastructure. So that'd be like your cables and this and that connects everything together. Exactly. The World Wide Web is actually software. And there's other ways of talking instead of talking via the protocol www. There used to be a horrible one when the internet first came up that you could go to another site, and I can't remember what it was called. It was text-based. It wasn't very friendly. You could go there and get files and so forth, but no GUIs. The World Wide Web is what really opened that up. Hypertext is a method of organization in which data sources are interconnected through a series of links or hyperlinks the users can activate to jump from one piece of information to another. Think about if there wasn't a way to put a link on a web page. Let's say Amazon has 5 million products for sale. I'm sure they have a lot more than that. Let's say they have 5 million products. You'd have to know 5 million website addresses, your URLs, in order to access those. And you'd have to know which one goes to which. It would be impossible, wouldn't it? So now they have searches. You can search by TV, and then it brings up these links that you can automatically go through. So everything's based upon links. Each document on the web is referred to as a web page. Web pages are stored on web servers. Documents on the web are accessed through a software program called a web browser. I know some of these aren't very exciting. Now, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Pretty much all these that end with ML are markup languages. Let me show you here. Let's take a look, see what other markup languages there are. Again, the goal here is to be able to transmit information back and forth. That's a markup language. Here's Wikipedia, which we all know is 100% correct. Here's a business narrative markup language. Here's a bullet ML, whatever that is. Cold Fusion markup language. Emotion markup language. Financial product markup language. Wiki markup language. Voice XML. Well, that's still a markup language. XML is a little bit different. Now, if I go to list of markup languages, this is our list of different ones. They got a math markup language, probably multiple ones. MathML, language describing mathematical notation. Why does it do that? That's I know how to fix it now. I did that this morning. Okay. Display settings. Duplicate these displays. Keep changes. Thanks. Music Encoding Initiative, MEI. That doesn't follow the ML at the end. Usually people put ML. Music XML, an XML-based music notation file format. Can you do new music notes very easy on a page? No. So if you're going to have something that's got a lot of music notes, you want an easy way to do it. So they came up with a markup language of sorts. XML is a little bit different in that regard. So yeah, lots of different markup languages. Do you think there's anybody that knows all of these? No. And I don't know all the HTML. Some of these commands you'll see here, I'll say, okay, that's what that's for. I didn't know that, and then I'll forget because I don't use it. So you don't have to know every markup language element we'll talk about. Okay. Let's see. Markup language describes the content and structure of a document by identifying or tagging different document elements. Early years of HTML, browser developers were free to define and modify language as no rules or syntax were defined. This was a nightmare. When I first started in IT, worked at IFR, I was a webmaster. I think I mentioned there for 2.5 years, and different versions of HTML existed, and they had some specific to Netscape, some specific to IE, and one would look good on this browser but wouldn't look good on the other. So very frustrating. The World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3C, created a set of standards or specifications for all browser manufacturers to follow. This is what makes everything standard. So they were a blessing. So now, if you create a web page, in theory, it looks the same on each browser. I say in theory because I think they still add in their own little items. If I come up with a standard, does that mean you have to follow it? No. Especially if you're Microsoft, who cares, right? You're so big, you don't want anybody to use those other browsers anyway. They've actually gotten lawsuits over that. They used to be such that they didn't really want Chrome on their Windows platform. And I don't remember the specifics of the lawsuit, but they did something such that they were pushing everybody to IE or Edge or whatever it was. Anybody remember that lawsuit? No. Yeah, they get sued every day. They don't care, but yeah, they got in trouble because they were trying to force everybody to use their browser. You might say, well, who cares? It's free. It's not like you're buying it, and well, they want to drown out all competition. And here's what this indicates: W3C has no enforcement power. They come up with recommendations that are beneficial to everyone, but doesn't mean you have to follow them. Now, there's a XHTML, extensible hypertext markup language. It's a different version of HTML enforced with a stricter set of standards. And then HTML5 was developed as a de facto standard for the next generation of HTML. What's special about HTML5? Is anybody? It allows the standard HTML isn't very fancy. Allows markup languages, allows you to change fonts, colors, arrangement, and so forth. HTML5 has taken another step further where you can do animations and things like that. Yeah, some of the web pages you go to where you got like a video showing, and have you seen that? Where it's like, I think Cat Cali even has one of them where a drone's going around the campus and you can see a picture. You can use HTML5 to easily create those. Before you had to use a package called Flash, and then you had to have Flash Player installed. I think that's kind of a nightmare in that MindTap. Some people have trouble getting the Flash installed. Okay. Older features of HTML are often deprecated, if I'm saying that right, or phased out. You may need to use them if you're supporting older browsers. Um, I'm going to try really hard to be the newest version of HTML. I learned HTML 20 years ago, 22 years ago. When I was teaching some 12 years ago, somebody said, you're using old HTML. It's like, I can't get out of the habit. I've used it for so long that it's hard for me to break. Here's a history of HTML, real exciting. You can read that tonight when you need to go to bed. Tools for working with HTML. Basic text editors such as Windows Notepad. Other ones are Notepad++. I like Notepad++. I think you said you had it on your computer, right? I think it's one of the better editors for programming. I just go with Notepad because that's what's standard on here. It allows better formatting, I think, is the main thing I use it for. It's got a lot of other features to it. There's very basic functionality with Notepad, like searching, replacing. I've never used these other ones: Ultra Edit, Coffee Cup, BB Edit, Context. If you told me there was 50 other editors for HTML, it wouldn't surprise me. IDE. Now, there was one Visual Basic programming book that I taught out of, that each chapter had like 200 definitions. There's lots of definitions in IT. A lot of them aren't that important. If you go up to somebody, a programmer, and say, "What's W3C stand for?" They probably won't be able to tell you. It's just not a standard thing. IDE is one of those important ones you should know. When somebody's saying, "Well, what's IDE like?" Especially in a job interview, if they come to you, "What's an IDE like?" and you say, "ID, what's that?" It's like, walk out the door, then you're done. They're gonna laugh at you for 2 months because you don't know what IDE stands for. It's integrated development environment. This is what allows the additional functionality when you're writing a computer program. Maybe it might allow you to see the errors. Like if you're programming in C or C++ and you type a piece of code wrong, it'll put a red squiggly underneath it. It what allows you to have when you start typing a command and it pops up with a list of choices. The what?
Doesn't Notepad do that?
Oh no.
It does.
Notepad++, you mean?
Yeah.
That good.
It does.
Oh, does it? Yeah. Yeah, when you start typing HTML, for example, you do HT and it start with H. It'll bring up everything that starts with H. And then you can do a down arrow to go to HTML, or you can do it code completion by doing a tab on it. If you got a good IDE, it makes your programming so easy. You can fix screw ups and just no time flat. Let me end this. And let me see if I can bring up something. If I installed an IDE in here. The most popular one is probably Visual Studio. And I installed that yesterday. All the additional functionality. Can't see it again? I hate this. Though I know what's doing it now. It looks like it's a Microsoft product. Okay. So I got Visual Studio here. I'll do a file, new project. Some of you may have signed up for the Visual Basic programming class or taken it online, and you'll use this. And see, here's Visual Basic here. And I go to desktop and Windows Form app. Pretty sure it shows a console application. Okay. So I'm going to create a program. You don't have all of this initializing when you go into console. That's what I say. Yeah, allow it. No access. You see across the top here all these nice features: project, build, debug, team, so forth. Those are the features I'm talking about of an IDE. I could not tell you what all this stuff does. It might take you a year to learn and become an expert at all these different items. I don't want that. Common controls. I'm going to there it is. Drop two text boxes on there. And I know those are pretty small, but I got my button here. Double click the button. Okay. Now those text boxes are called, I don't know what they're called, like text box 1 or something like that. If I start typing text box, you see how it's text box 1 is down here? So I can down arrow to that and press my tab, and then I do dot text equals, and then I put in happy. Visual Basic, do I need a semicolon? I don't think so. Text box 2, I'm popping up here with this, and I see text box 2 here. I can fill in, and I start typing text. You see everything that starts with T comes up. At first, it's annoying. You got all these windows keep popping up, and it's like, this is insane. Don't pop up. You disrupt my flow every time. You find that you get used to those pretty quickly, and they're great to work with. If you don't know, like I want to declare a variable, dim num1 as, and I don't know exactly what it is. I start typing what I do know, int, and I see, oh, okay, I do an int 16, int 32, int 64, or just simply an integer, like that. This has got a little green squiggly underneath it. It means I haven't used it yet. So I can type num1 is equal to 3. Whoops. I blend together the different programming languages. So a good IDE is it's just invaluable for myself. That's an IDE. Instead of you typing it in wrong, like you don't know what this is, and so you type that's interesting. Stupid package. It won't let me do it wrong. Some of the stuff is case sensitive. I was trying to get an error up here. But up here, if I didn't put the 2 on there, see the little red squiggly appears underneath? That tells you right then, hey, you did something wrong. Now you won't see that with Notepad. Sounds like Notepad++ may pop up with some options there. That's why when you're looking at a programming language, this is your main thing you're looking at. There's speed considerations, efficiency, but you're looking, does it have a good environment? Can it make my job easier? Okay. That's so weird that even puts a little bit up at the top you can't see here at Wellington, right? Okay, so ID. A software package that provides comprehensive coverage of all phases of the development process, from writing HTML code to creating scripts for programs running on web servers. The initial IDs were not good. You'd write a COBOL program, and it would tell you had an error at line 53. What do you hope that is done with the lines? They're numbered. Otherwise, you'd have to sit there and do your down arrow 53 times until you find the right line. So when they came out with the editors that had the numbers on the lines, that was great. And then they came out where you could print it with the lines, the line numbers there. Again, they're much better now. A good IDE will allow you to double-click your error, and it'll take you right to that line. Now, there are cases where you still can't use IDEs. I hate these. Maybe you got a web page you've created? Nobody's created a web page for their own. Some of the web pages do not allow you to access an IDE. Like if you want to do any kind of programming behind the scenes, you have to go into their bizarre editor. You put in like your Perl code, and then you save it, and you go run a web page. No IDE at all. And then just errors out. You try to guess what's wrong. Horrible. Validators. Programs that test code to ensure it contains no syntax errors. When you're going through the, remember the little Cody guy that comes up, the sandbox with the code? It's got a validator there to see if you got any syntax errors. Now this talks about a title, and then it's empty elements which do not contain content. An element attribute, that's for an image source. And then we got several elements here, nested. Well, let's talk about this. This looks pretty good, doesn't it? It's good nested and looks good. So let me close this and then readjust the screen. Display settings. This is going to be annoying if PowerPoint's going to do that each time. Maybe I won't ever do a show. I'll just go through it slide by slide. And duplicate these displays. Keep changes. Okay. So now you're back to seeing me. Now here, my first web page. And I'm going to come back here. I'm going to type this is my second line. And then I'll do an enter. And I'll say this is my third line. Now you can save that. Now you want to leave this open. You don't want to close it each time. Some people like to close it each time. And it's best just to leave it open. Now if I go back to my HTML here, I can right click on it again and I can say open with Google Chrome. If you already have it open, all you have to do is refresh your page. I probably already had it open. That's no good. Didn't work. It says this is my second line, this is my third line. I put it on separate lines over here. What you're going to find is that in order for you to go down the next line, you have to put a line break there of some sort. A paragraph element. So it's very, what it looks like on your Notepad or a Notepad++ doesn't mean anything. Now there are exceptions to that. There is an HTML tag such that you can say, hey, leave it exactly as it's formatted. And I don't know, actually I don't know how to do a correct line break. I'll show you the old style. It still works. You do BR. That's a line break. If I remember right, to the new structure says that you do a BR and you have to put a slash like that. We'll leave that there to see if it errors out. But that's how you do line breaks. So now if I do a save on that, and I have my page over here, so I'm going to come over here and refresh it. Now you see they're on separate lines. Did everybody get that? Okay. Now, if I come over here, let's say I want to indent this. It had nice indentation on that web page, didn't it? So I can put spaces on these two. I want to indent those two. If I save it again, and I come over here and refresh this, and there's different ways you can refresh on different web pages. On Google Chrome, there's a little arrow here, a little circular arrow. I click it 2 times, I click it a 3rd time, still didn't work. It ignores white space you put in there. So if you want to actually have spaces in there, you have to put a different element. Now, I don't sit here and worry too much. I'm trying to just here demonstrate about formatting a web page. If I want to put a white space in here, you do a ampersand, non-breaking space, semicolon. Ampersand, non-breaking space, semicolon. Ampersand, non-breaking space, semicolon. Internet connections unstable. Okay, so I put these in here. Now I do a file save. It is very picky. You have to have that ampersand. That's above your 7 key, in case you're wondering. You do Shift 7. And it has to be, I don't think case matters. I'm not sure about that. I always do lowercase. But so NB, SP, and then you have to end it with a semicolon. Each one of these will put 1 space. So now if I, let's see if I saved it. Yeah, I did. Refresh it. You see how it now scoots it over three spaces. So if I want to put 20 spaces in there, what do you think I have to do? Yeah, put that in there 20 times. Very tedious. This is what I was saying. People do not normally create web pages by hand, just from the fact that it's horrible. Now I got a web page of my own that I've created by hand. mathheals.com. And I do this completely by hand. I don't use any kind of editor, just because I like to get in there fast, get it done, get out. But is it very fancy? No, it's not fancy at all. If I right click on that and say view page source, I got a little JavaScript in there, but I get down to here, and it's very basic coding. Notice about this, though. I put spaces in here, didn't I? I did that just so it looks good. So you can easily see when you come here, if I want to put a new what LI, whatever that stands for, if I want to put a new LI in here, I know exactly where to put it. So I put it down here, this line right here. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. And you can still see it. I'll go ahead and do full screen. It just makes it a little easier to see, I think. Okay. It talks about an element attribute, image, IMG, that's image. Puts an image on your web page. So some of them are pretty easy to remember. BR, break, that's pretty easy to remember, right? A, what in the world does A stand for? That's not as clear. So some of them you'll be able to easily see what it stands for. Some are not. Title, what does that imply you need to that's going to put on your web page? Title. Yeah. So like I say, some of these you'll have no trouble with. Footer. I don't think I ever put a footer on a web page. Okay, that's got me curious. Footer does not appear, appears to be in your body. Now, in case you're wondering, the header, if I come up here and I put the beginning and then closing for the head, and then I do an indent a little bit. Quit going away. Okay, I do the head up here. I do the slash head. Do a title. They do not have to be on separate lines. You could have every HTML you have on one line. And that's actually the way it appears. Like some of you that have Ubuntu, like that, you create your web page. When I download it, in some cases, it'll put the entire thing on one line. It's hard grading, but that's okay. I don't look at your individual HTML at that point. I'm looking to see if the web page looks correct. I hate it going between. Now, that's not standard, is it? They haven't decided on a standard for the transfer of that, because otherwise I'd be able to see it just fine. Now, in case you're wondering, well, why does he like Notepad++ or WordPad? WordPad will put those on separate lines. So it's only if I go in Notepad do I have that. Okay, so I can do a title, and I'll say, this is my title of my page. And I'll have to close it. Most of the times, when you have a beginning tag, you will have a closing tag. Now, did I have a closing tag for this BR? I didn't, did I? But standard HTML says when you have a beginning tag, you have a closing tag. So the new HTML5 says you need a closing here. Even though this is old, this is deprecated according to their terms. That means that eventually they'll phase it out. I'll probably be dead at that point. I don't care. But you guys will probably have to worry about fixing all the BRs from 20 years ago. Okay, so I got my title in there now. If I save that, and I'll come back over here and refresh this. On this tab up here, you see it says this is my title of my page. Can you still hear me here in Arc City?
Yep.
Okay. You guys are quiet. You got those. You got microphones over each one of you, and it's just like when you got microphones over each one of you, you say the littlest thing, or you shuffle your papers, and everybody at every place hears it. I had one person in an IDL class one time eating onion rings. They're eating onion rings. You could hear it, chomp, chomp, chomp. Like, yeah, don't eat onion rings in class. Okay. So this in the title up here, that's where your title went. Now I'm wondering where in the world footer goes. I'm guessing down here in the bottom bar, but let's see. Because I've never used footer. Footer. Oops. This is my footer. You can see I'm real imaginative. We have our starting HTML tag. We have our closing HTML tag. Again, if you don't want this on the same line, you can use whatever spacing you want. You know, I can throw that down like that. You can throw that down like that. If you want to use indentations, You can do indentations like this. Sometimes that helps from a coding standpoint, whether it's markup language or C or C++ or Visual Basic or whatever. I had a student one semester, she was in my, I think it was a C++ class. And she was really good at math. She was in differential equations and so forth. And she made everything left aligned. Everything. And you can do that in HTML, get away with it. You cannot do it in a higher programming language. And she was having a lot of trouble. And I said, you really need to put spaces here. And I thought, I'm sure she thought I was just whacked out. So I was like, why do you want to put spaces? And it's so you can easily see what lines up with what. And we're going to see that when we get to JavaScript. That really does help you in those cases. Now let me save that. And I'll come back here and refresh this page. I don't see no footer. Did you see any change?
Yeah.
Oh, I put it right here, didn't it? Well, that's insane. Did I do it right? Footer, close footer. Was it spelled footer? It was spelled footer. Huh, interesting. I'll have to Google that later and see what footer does. Okay. First line in HTML file is a document type declaration or doc type. That indicates the type of markup language used in the document. Oftentimes, you'll also see this if you create an HTML document in Word. I had that one semester in this class. I had somebody who was trying to create all their HTML over in Word. And when they saved it as HTML, I could see up here the meta tags, the document types indicated they had created in Word or another. It also will tell you if you created another editor. They didn't know enough about HTML to clean that up, and I said, "Well, you need to create this by hand. That's purposes class. And the purposes class not go into Word and create something really nice and save as HTML. Purposes class learn this by hand. I don't know how to do that." 5 minutes time, I can show you how to do a file save as in Word. Then the class is done. So yeah, don't create these in Word. They're meant to be done by hand. Although MindTap won't let you create it in Word. Okay. Element tags is the fundamental building blocks in every HTML document that marks an element. Starting tag. This is what I was talking about. And then you got to have an ending tag where you have your slash. And then you have something in between, and that's what this is indicating. Here's an example of an element tag. P, and then we got a slash P here at the end. Would you be able to guess that from the one letter? No, might be hard to see what P stands for. It tells you here that stands for a paragraph element. That means over here, instead of using these BRs that I used, let me come down here. I'm going to get rid of my footer since it didn't work. And first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. I could use line breaks. I could do the BRs to separate them and put them on separate lines. Instead, I can use the paragraph tag. So I put a less than P and then greater than. And then I'll come over here and I'll close paragraphs. I'll come over here, put a P, and then I'll put a closing P. And I'll do the same thing here. You have to do around each one. These would indicate that they're separate paragraphs. I'm going to go ahead and save that. If I refresh this, first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. Do you notice the difference between that and line breaks? Yeah, puts an extra space in there, doesn't it? That can be annoying to have that extra space there, because if you got 100, if you got 100 paragraphs, you're going to have 100 extra lines, aren't you? Sometimes people don't like that. Is everybody good on the paragraph tag? Now, if I go over to Microsoft Word and I start typing something, and make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. I got my first line, my second line, my third line. What I'm doing after each one of those is I'm pressing an enter. Do you think that's going to be a line break or a paragraph? Paragraph. So if I save this as HTML at this point, they'll have all those extra lines in there. Maybe a little bit more than you want. Instead, if I said my first line and I did a shift enter, my second line, shift enter, and then my third line. Does it really look that different in Word? No, you can see a little bit of extra space, right? But it kind of looks the same, doesn't it? Now these will do line breaks. So if you had, for example, somebody that was having an issue where they're saving off 70 pages and is putting all these extra. I've had this, by the way. That's why I bring it up. They have 70 pages and they're saving in HTML format so they can put it up on the intranet or someplace where people can see it in a web page format. There is a way to search through this. There's a paragraph tag right here. Looks like a paragraph. If I click that, this will tell you a paragraph versus a line break. I'm not very good at this, but if you can highlight the paragraph tag, it's been a long time. There it goes. If I copy that, so I do a Control-C, then you can go through and somewhere do it like a replace. Here's replace. And it's been too long, so I won't be able to tell you exactly on this, but you put the, I think I put it in there. I think I put it in there. And then you come down here and you put whatever you want to replace it with, like line break. And that's how you can go through and replace all of those. Problem with the Control-V is it's an invisible character. You can't see it here. Does that make sense? Why you need to know the difference between a BR and a P if you're going in IT? Yeah. Even though the package is doing it for them, they're creating their own web page and uploading it. If you have to do any kind of interfacing with them, and they're saying, I want this to look differently, you're going to have to know how to manipulate that. You can also, especially in Notepad here, you could do a search. You could do a search for your P's and your /P's, and you can replace them. It's not so easy, though. If I come here and I do a replace, I want to replace my /P's with BRs. How do I do that? Like that. And then replace it with BR like that. And you're saying, how hard is that? So if I do a replace all, is that all I need to do? We got these other P's, right? And well, that's easy enough. So I can replace all those other P's with blank. And if I did a replace all, it works, didn't it? Not that hard. But the problem becomes when you got the P's you don't want to get rid of. Because the replace all gets rid of all of them, doesn't it? To get rid of them one at a time, what do you think you have to do? Choose this replace, and then one at a time change it. That becomes tedious. You know, if you got 100 paragraph tags and you have to go through 100 of them, then it takes you a while. There's other ways around that, but usually what I do is I'll copy the code that I want to work with, and I'll paste it into another place, do my searches, replaces, and then paste it back. I created 3 courses for University of Maryland University College for their MicroMasters program. And the editor I had to work with was a package called edX. It's a free LMS and very crude HTML. You cannot believe if you think, well, I'm just going to use a nice editor. Well, good luck with that, but sometimes you can't. And what I would do is I would copy the HTML, and I'd usually paste it into something else, work with it, and then paste it back because it was so cryptic. It was even to the point where you were typing wasn't the right place. You'd be in another tag, and where it displayed it was just bad. If I still have access to that, I'll show that to you because it shows you just need no HTML sometimes if you're in IT. Okay, let's see. This talks about the hierarchy. But I want to show you a little bit on Blackboard because we're quickly running out of time. I do a lot of fiddling with this over the weekend, but I think I finally figured out a method to have it display for you guys where it isn't real clunky. When I dumped everything in from MindTap, it brought in like 100 elements. Maybe not 100, but it must have been 50 there. So it looked like you had 50 things to do, and they were all mixed together, and it just wasn't no rhyme or reason, and so forth. And this is going so slow. Good part of it is Cox is coming out again tomorrow, which probably means on Wednesday we won't have internet. But they're supposed to fix it tomorrow. So, okay. So if I go into, let's see, where did I put it? I put it in the online section here. I'm going to transfer it over the other two now that I've cleaned it up. Go to course content. There's a week 2 here. And I created 3 separate folders for like the new perspectives here. The tutorial here, the first item will be for reading purposes. So you can go here and you can read all the different items. And then for the grading portion, the part that's graded, I'll put them down here. So there's only going to be that portion. That's all you ever see. The first one will always be your reading, and then these will be your graded part. Now, even though I say that, some of these still are just reading. Not in this one particularly. Now, if I click this Jed's Tree Care, and I'm about out of time. I got 1 more minute. I'll speak fast as soon as it comes up. This is where you're going to get into designing using HTML. And that's where it'll walk you through pretty much exactly what I'm showing you on tags and everything. It'll show you how to create that. It'll have the different items here and so forth. It'll go through the instructions. You click next. It'll tell you use a meta element. We're not done with this, by the way, this chapter, so you're probably not ready to jump into this unless you already know it or you already played with HTML a little bit. It says within the document tag body. We've already talked about body, haven't we? Header and so forth. Yeah, it's officially 1:20, so I guess we'll stop there. And next class we'll continue on in this PowerPoint going over HTML.